Imagine this, you're 7 months pregnant, living in a beautiful mansion with the man you've loved for 20 years. He buys your vitamins, cooks your breakfast, and says he's protecting you and your baby. But one morning, you notice something strange, a tiny change in those pills. And that's the moment you realize the person sleeping next to you might be planning your murder. This is the chilling, true crime-style story of Sarah Mitchell, a wife, a mother-to-be, and the target of a deadly plan worth millions. Stay with me until the end, because what she discovers will shock you, and what she does next might just save her life and her babies. If you enjoy gripping real-life stories like this, don't forget to like, drop your thoughts in the comments, share this with a friend, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Sarah, honey, don't forget your vitamins, Mark called from the kitchen, his voice carrying that practiced warmth she'd grown to trust over their 20-year marriage. The words floated through their Connecticut mansion like a daily ritual, as predictable as the sunrise streaming through their floor-to-ceiling windows, as constant as the doubt that had been growing in her chest for the past 3 months. The coffee maker gurgled in the background, its expensive Italian mechanisms producing the perfect brew that Mark insisted on having every morning. The machine had cost more than most people's monthly rent, $4,000 for something that made coffee. But Mark had insisted it was an investment in their lifestyle. Everything in their life was an investment, Sarah had come to realize, including her. Sarah Mitchell stood at the marble counter, her hand hovering over the prenatal vitamin bottle. At 42, this pregnancy was supposed to be her miracle, their miracle. After years of trying, after countless fertility treatments that had drained both their emotions and their bank accounts. $63,000 over 5 years. Mark reminded her whenever she forgot to be grateful enough. $63,000 to create the life growing inside her. The kitchen around her was a testament to their success, or rather, Mark's success, as he liked to remind her whenever she mentioned returning to her law career. Custom cabinets in pristine white that couldn't show a single fingerprint without Mark noticing. Professional-grade appliances she rarely used to their full potential because Mark preferred to eat out at restaurants where he could be seen. An island larger than most people's entire kitchens, where she sat alone most mornings while Mark conducted business calls in his study. Sarah picked up the vitamin bottle, something nagging at her. The pills looked different today, though she couldn't quite place why. They seemed larger, a slightly different shade of white than she remembered, with an almost grayish tint in the center. She held one up to the morning light streaming through the window, examining it closely. The coating seemed uneven, as if someone had handled them with damp fingers. "Did you hear me, Sarah?" Mark's voice carried an edge now, that subtle shift in tone that meant his patience was wearing thin. "Your vitamins. The baby needs them." "Already took them," she lied, slipping the bottle into her purse instead. The lie came so easily it surprised her. When had she started lying to her husband of 20 years? When had his concern started feeling like surveillance? When had his love started feeling like ownership? Mark appeared in the doorway, his 6'2" frame filling the space. He was dressed impeccably. As always, a $3,000 suit tailored to perfection, Italian leather shoes that cost more than most people's mortgage payments, a watch that could buy a car. His dark hair was freshly cut, styled with precision. He looked like success, smelled like money, moved like a predator. "Let me see," he said, approaching her with deliberate steps that made Sarah's heart rate spike. "See what?" Sarah asked, her hand instinctively moving to protect her purse, pulling it closer to her body. "I want to watch you take them," Mark said, his voice soft but firm, the voice he used in business negotiations when he was about to close a deal. "The doctor said consistency is important. Same time every day. You've been forgetful lately." "I haven't been forgetful," Sarah protested, remembering how he'd been planting that seed for weeks now, telling their friends she was becoming absent-minded, telling her doctor she was having memory issues. "I told you, I already took them." "Then you won't mind taking another?" Mark said, reaching for her purse with the entitlement of someone who'd never been told no. "Better safe than sorry. Right for our little princess?" Sarah pulled her purse away, a flare of defiance that surprised them both. "Taking too many vitamins can be harmful too, Mark. You should know that." His eyes narrowed slightly, that calculating look she'd seen him give business rivals before he destroyed them. "When did you become a medical expert?" "When I was a lawyer," Sarah replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "Remember before you convinced me to quit? I had a case once involving prenatal vitamins. Overdosing can cause liver damage." It was a lie, but Mark didn't know that. He'd never paid attention to her legal career beyond how much money she brought in and how it looked to his colleagues that his wife worked at a prestigious firm. The truth was, she'd been one of the best medical malpractice attorneys in the state, but Mark had systematically diminished her accomplishments until she'd started believing she hadn't been that good anyway. "Fine," Mark said, but his jaw was tight, that telltale muscle twitching beneath his perfectly shaved skin. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his cologne Tom Ford, $200 a bottle making her stomach turn in a way that had nothing to do with morning sickness. His hands rested on her belly, possessive rather than protective. "We need our little one healthy and strong. She's going to be perfect, just like her mother used to be." Used to be. The words stung more than they should have. Sarah had learned to decode Mark's subtle insults over the years. The way he could make a compliment feel like a criticism, make love feel like judgment. "Speaking of which," Sarah said, turning to face him and stepping out of his embrace, studying his expression carefully. "Rebecca called yesterday. She wants to meet for lunch today. She's excited about becoming an aunt." Mark's jaw tightened further, that telltale muscle flickering beneath his skin like a warning sign. He'd been to his barber yesterday every 2 weeks like clockwork. $75 for a haircut that looked exactly the same each time. "Your sister needs to stop filling your head with nonsense. She's been divorced 3 times. Sarah, she sees problems where there aren't any because she's a failure at relationships." "She's just protective," Sarah replied, noting how his hands had moved to grip her shoulders, his fingers pressing into her skin just shy of painful, leaving marks she knew would bruise by evening. "Paranoid is more like it," Mark muttered, releasing her to grab his briefcase Louis Vuitton, a gift she'd bought him for their 15th anniversary when she still had access to her own money. Back when she still had her own credit cards, her own bank account, her own identity. "She's jealous of what we have. 20 years of marriage, a beautiful home, and now a baby on the way. Everything she never managed to hold on to because she's impossible to live with." The criticism of Rebecca stung, but Sarah had learned over the years that defending her sister only led to longer arguments, to Mark's voice rising, to neighbors pretending not to hear through the walls of their million-dollar homes. She thought about how Rebecca's 3 divorces had all been from men Mark had introduced her to, men from his country club, men who turned out to be variations of the same controlling theme. Rebecca had seen the pattern and escaped. Sarah had married it. "You'll be home for dinner?" she asked instead, changing the subject with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to navigate around landmines. "I'll be late tonight. Board meeting," Mark said, checking his phone with an expression she couldn't read. His thumb moved quickly across the screen, deleting something before she could see it. "The Peterson acquisition. Don't wait up. You need your rest. The baby needs you healthy." "Another late meeting?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice light, though she'd checked his company's calendar through his secretary last week. There was no Peterson acquisition. There was no board meeting. "That's the 3rd this week. Success requires sacrifice," Mark said smoothly. The line he'd used for 20 years to justify every absence, every missed anniversary, every birthday where he'd been too busy to remember. "You know how important this is for our future, for our baby's future. Private schools don't pay for themselves. Do you want our daughter going to public school with those people?" Those people? Sarah knew exactly what he meant, and it made her sick. Mark's casual bigotry had gotten worse over the years, or maybe she'd just started noticing it more. The way he talked about their Hispanic neighbors, the way he referred to her black colleagues from her law firm days, the subtle and not so subtle prejudices that poisoned every conversation about their child's future. "Of course not," she said, because it was expected. Because fighting about his prejudices while potentially carrying poison in her purse seemed like the wrong battle to choose. "Good girl," Mark said, kissing her forehead like she was a child who'd given the right answer. "I've got to run. Early meeting before the board meeting. Remember, don't overexert yourself today. Maybe skip lunch with Rebecca." You know how she upsets you. She doesn't upset me. Last time you saw her, you came home crying, Mark interrupted, his tone suggesting the conversation was over. Because she told me about her cancer scare, Sarah protested, remembering how Mark had been annoyed by her tears. Telling her she was being dramatic about someone else's problem, that she needed to think about their baby instead of her sister's hypochondria. Exactly. Stress isn't good for the baby. Think about our daughter, Sarah. She comes first now. As the garage door rumbled shut, the house seemed to exhale, releasing tension she hadn't realized had been building. The silence was both a relief and an accusation. This house, with its 20-foot ceilings and echo-prone halls, had become a beautiful prison. Every room held a memory of another piece of herself she'd given up. The office that had become Mark's gym, the art studio that had become a storage room, the guest room where her mother used to stay before Mark decided her visits were too disruptive. Sarah pulled out her phone. Opening the screenshot folder she'd hidden behind a calculator app, a trick Rebecca had taught her during one of their secret coffee meetings. The ones Sarah told Mark were prenatal yoga classes. The text she'd captured at 2 in the morning still glowed on her screen. She'd managed to grab it before Mark could delete it from his phone. A new habit she'd developed over the past month as his behavior had become increasingly erratic. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. Wear the red tie I bought you. You know what it does to me. The hotel is booked under my name this time. Room 417. Can't wait to feel you inside me again. Vanessa. Sarah knew exactly who she was. 28 years old, blonde, a personal trainer at Mark's gym with the kind of body that came from making fitness a full-time job and the kind of morals that came from growing up believing you deserved whatever you could take. Sarah had met her once, briefly, when she'd surprised Mark at the gym with lunch. The way Vanessa had looked at her with pity and superiority mixed together had made Sarah's skin crawl. The way she'd touched Mark's arm, laughed at his jokes, positioned herself between them, had made it clear she saw Sarah as a temporary obstacle. The vitamin bottle felt heavier in her purse than usual, its weight both physical and metaphorical. Sarah pulled it out, examining the label closely for the first time in weeks. The pharmacy label looked right her name, Dr. Patricia Anderson, the correct prescription, the refill date from 3 weeks ago. But something nagged at her, a whisper of intuition she'd been suppressing for too long. The same instinct that had made her successful as a lawyer before Mark convinced her to quit. She'd been so good at her job once, rising star at Patterson, Mills and Associates. They'd called her the youngest woman to make senior associate, the prosecutor's nightmare. Her colleagues joked, because she could find the flaw in any case. She'd won 17 cases in a row, made partner track in record time. But that was before Mark. Before he'd convinced her that being a wife was more important than being a lawyer. Before he'd persuaded her that his success was their success. Before she'd forgotten what her own success felt like. Sarah opened the vitamin bottle and poured a few pills into her palm. They looked wrong. She couldn't explain it exactly. But 20 years of taking various medications had taught her what pharmaceuticals should look like. These pills had an almost handmade quality to them, as if someone had taken them apart and put them back together. The coating was uneven, and when she rolled them between her fingers, she could feel slight irregularities in their surface. She thought about the past few weeks, the nausea that was worse than normal morning sickness, the dizzy spells that came out of nowhere, the cramping that Dr. Anderson had said was unusual for this stage of pregnancy, the spotting that had terrified her but that Mark had dismissed as normal, refusing to let her call the doctor after hours. Her phone rang, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. The number was from the hospital. "Sarah Mitchell speaking," she answered, using her professional voice, the one from her days as a successful attorney, the one Mark said made her sound aggressive and unfeminine. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Dr. Patricia Anderson from Connecticut General. We need to discuss your recent blood work results." "Can you come in today?" Sarah's heart skipped, her free hand moving instinctively to her belly, where she could feel the flutter of movement, the miracle she'd waited so long to experience. "Is everything okay with the baby?" "The baby is fine," Dr. Anderson assured her. But there was something in her tone, a careful quality that made Sarah's stomach clench. But we found some unusual substances in your system that we need to discuss immediately. How soon can you be here? I can be there in an hour, Sarah said, already reaching for her keys. Good. And Sarah, Dr. Anderson paused, and Sarah could hear papers rustling in the background, the sound of a keyboard clicking. Bring your prenatal vitamins with you, all of them. Any medications you're taking, actually, everything. Is this serious? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer from the doctor's tone. Just come in as soon as you can, Dr. Anderson said, which was answer enough. And Sarah, maybe bring someone with you. Your sister, perhaps? The suggestion sent a chill down Sarah's spine. Doctors didn't usually suggest bringing support unless the news was bad. The drive to the hospital was a blur of autumn colors and racing thoughts. Connecticut in October was breathtaking, the maples and oaks painting the landscape in shades of fire. But Sarah barely noticed. Her hands gripped the steering wheel of her BMW, another gift from Mark. Another cage with leather seats and a tracking device he'd installed for her safety as she navigated the familiar streets. She passed the country club where Mark golfed every Saturday with his business partners, where wives weren't allowed in the main dining room during lunch hours, where she'd overheard two men joking about their prenuptial agreements and their starter wives. She'd wanted to leave that day, but Mark had gripped her arm and whispered that she was overreacting, that it was just locker room talk, that she was embarrassing him with her sensitivity. She passed the high-end boutiques where he insisted she shop to maintain their image, stores where a single dress cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payment, where the saleswomen knew her by name and knew her husband's credit card number by heart. They also knew to call him if she tried to buy anything he hadn't pre-approved. She discovered that humiliation last month when she tried to buy a dress for Rebecca's birthday dinner, and the saleswoman had said, "Let me just call Mr. Mitchell to authorize this purchase." She passed the park where they'd planned to take their child, where they'd picked out the perfect bench for watching their baby take first steps. The same park where she'd seen Mark last month with Vanessa, supposedly during a business meeting, the two of them jogging together, his hand on the small of her back as they stretched by the fountain. When she'd confronted him, he'd said she was being paranoid, that Vanessa was just a trainer, that pregnant women often became irrationally jealous. Sarah thought about the life insurance papers she'd found in his desk drawer last week while looking for stamps. They were marked with sticky notes in his handwriting, Sarah's signature here, and increased to $5 million. The forms were partially filled out, everything except her signature. She hadn't signed anything. She was certain of that. She would remember signing something that raised her life insurance policy from $500,000 to $5 million. Then there were the other documents beneath those power of attorney forms. Partially completed. Papers about mental health facilities with ominous names like Shady Pines Psychiatric Treatment Center and Restful Meadows Behavioral Health. Brochures with Mark's handwriting in the margins, best option for long-term care, private rooms available, excellent security, no visiting without permission. Why would Mark be researching psychiatric facilities, and why did his notes focus on security and restricted visiting? She called Rebecca from the car, using the hands-free system. "Hey, sis," Rebecca answered cheerfully. "Ready for lunch?" "Change of plans," Sarah said. "Can you meet me at the hospital? Dr. Anderson wants to see me about some test results." Rebecca's tone immediately shifted. "Is the baby okay?" "She said the baby's fine, but there's something in my blood work. Becca, I'm scared." "I'm on my way," Rebecca said. 20 minutes. Don't go in without me." "She said to bring my vitamins," Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly. There was a pause. "Sarah, have you been feeling okay lately? I mean, besides normal pregnancy stuff." "I've been sick," Sarah admitted. "More than usual. Dizzy, nauseous, cramping. Mark says it's normal, but Mark's not a doctor." Rebecca interrupted. 20 minutes. "Sarah, wait for me." The antiseptic smell of Connecticut General Hospital made Sarah's morning sickness worse. She'd barely made it to the bathroom before losing what little breakfast she'd managed to eat dry toast that Mark had criticized her for eating. "Carbs make you bloated, honey. Think about getting your figure back after the baby. You've already gained 30 pounds, and you're only 7 months along." Rebecca arrived as Sarah was rinsing her mouth at the sink, her face pale in the fluorescent lighting. You look terrible, Rebecca said bluntly, the way only sisters could. Thanks, Sarah said weakly. I feel terrible. Have for weeks. Why didn't you tell me? Mark said I was being dramatic, that I was looking for attention, that lots of women work until the day they deliver without complaining. Rebecca's expression darkened. Mark says a lot of things. Come on, let's see what Dr. Anderson has to say. Dr. Anderson's office felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in as the doctor spread lab results across her desk. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, harsh and unforgiving, illuminating papers that would change everything. Dr. Anderson was usually cheerful, quick with a joke about pregnancy cravings or swollen feet. Today, her face was grave, her usual smile replaced with deep concern. Sarah, Rebecca, thank you for coming. Dr. Anderson began, her words measured and precise, a slight Boston accent coloring her consonants. I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you been taking any medications besides your prescribed prenatals? Anything at all, even over-the-counter herbs, supplements, anything someone might have given you? No, Sarah replied, placing the vitamin bottle on the desk between them. Just the vitamins Mark picks up from the pharmacy every month? He's been so diligent about it, always making sure I never run out. He even sets alarms on his phone to remind me to take them. 8 a.m. every morning, like clockwork. He watches me take them most days. Dr. Anderson picked up the bottle, examined the label carefully, then opened it and poured a few pills into her palm. She held them up to the light, rolled them between her fingers, even smelled them. Then she did something that made Sarah's blood run cold. She licked her finger, touched it to one of the pills, and immediately went to her sink to rinse her mouth. These have been tampered with, Dr. Anderson said flatly, her medical professionalism cracking to show real fear. Sarah, the lab found traces of methotrexate in your blood. Significant traces? What's that? Sarah asked, though something in her gut already knew this was bad. The word sounded clinical, dangerous, like something that didn't belong anywhere near a pregnancy. It's a medication used for certain cancers and autoimmune conditions, Dr. Anderson explained, her voice gentle but firm. It's also used for ectopic pregnancies, but in a normal, healthy pregnancy like yours, it's used to terminate pregnancies. It's an abortifacient. It causes miscarriages. Sarah, specifically, it causes the kind of miscarriage that looks natural, like a chromosomal abnormality. If the dose is high enough, it can also cause organ failure in the mother. The room spun. Sarah gripped the arms of her chair, her knuckles white, her 3-carat wedding ring chosen by Mark. Nothing but the best for my wife, catching the harsh hospital lighting. That's impossible, she whispered. I wanted this baby more than anything. We tried for years and 5 rounds of IVF, $63,000. Years of injections and hormones and hope and heartbreak. I know, Dr. Anderson interrupted gently. I was there for all of it. Remember, that's why I'm asking about your vitamins. Someone has been switching your medication. This isn't an accident. Sarah, this is attempted murder. Rebecca's hand found Sarah's, squeezing tight. Who has access to your vitamins? Sarah. Just Mark, Sarah said, her voice barely audible. He picks them up. He brings them to me. He watches me take them. Dr. Anderson pulled out a small knife from her drawer and carefully cut one of the pills in half. The inside was different from the coating, a clearly different substance, grayer and grainier. She then pulled out a legitimate prenatal vitamin from a sample pack and cut it as well. The difference was obvious even to Sarah's untrained eye. The real vitamin was uniform in color and texture, while the one from her bottle had clearly been tampered with, hollowed out and refilled with something else. Based on the levels in your blood, this has been going on for at least 3 weeks, possibly longer, Dr. Anderson continued. The dose is calculated, Sarah, just enough to cause a miscarriage over time, but not enough to be immediately obvious. Whoever did this has medical knowledge or access to very specific information. They knew exactly how much to give you to make it look natural. Mark, Rebecca said, her voice cold with fury. It's Mark. It has to be. We can't jump to conclusions. Dr. Anderson began. The hell we can't, Rebecca interrupted. He's the only one with access. He's been controlling her for years. And Sarah, tell her about the insurance papers. Sarah told Dr. Anderson about the forged signatures, the psychiatric facility brochures, the affair with Vanessa. With each revelation, the doctor's expression grew more grim. We need to call the police, Dr. Anderson said finally. This is attempted murder of both you and your baby. Will my baby be okay? Sarah asked, her hand on her belly. We'll monitor closely, but yes, I believe your baby will be fine. You're at 28 weeks, well past the most vulnerable stage. The levels in your blood suggest you haven't been fully absorbing the methotrexate. Your body's been fighting it. And Sarah, it's a girl. I was going to tell you at your next appointment, but I think you need some good news right now. A girl, a daughter. Someone was trying to kill her daughter. I'm calling Detective Russell, Rebecca said, already pulling out her phone. She specializes in domestic violence cases. She'll know what to do. While Rebecca made calls, Dr. Anderson continued her examination. Sarah, has Mark been physically abusive? No, Sarah said automatically, then paused. Not exactly. He grabs me sometimes, leaves bruises. He says I bruise easily, that he doesn't know his own strength. Controlling behavior, isolation. Sarah thought about it, really thought about it for the first time. He didn't want me working, said it was too stressful while we were trying to conceive. He doesn't like me seeing friends without him. He monitors my spending, my phone, my email. He knows where I am every moment of every day. Classic coercive control, Dr. Anderson said. It often escalates to physical violence, or in this case, poisoning. Detective Morgan Russell arrived within an hour, a tall woman with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. She took Sarah's statement, examined the evidence, and made her assessment quickly. We have enough for attempted murder charges, she said, but we need more. We need to establish clear chain of custody for the poison pills, and ideally, we need a confession. How do we get that? Sarah asked. You go home, Russell said. Act normal. We'll wire you up. Get him talking. Absolutely not, Rebecca said immediately. You want to send her back to the man who's trying to kill her. With full surveillance, Russell assured her. We'll have officers nearby at all times. The moment we get what we need, we move in. It's too dangerous, Rebecca insisted. It's the only way, Russell said. Without a confession, a good lawyer could create reasonable doubt. Mark Mitchell has money, connections. We need this airtight. Sarah thought about her daughter, growing inside her despite the poison meant to kill her. I'll do it, she said quietly. Sarah. No, Rebecca began. I have to, Sarah said. For my daughter, I won't let him get away with this. They went to Rebecca's apartment to plan. It was smaller than Sarah's house, cluttered with law books and case files from Rebecca's work as a prosecutor, but it felt safer. Rebecca had been building a case against Mark for months. Sarah discovered, Look at this, Rebecca said, spreading documents across her dining table. Credit card statements showing hotel charges during supposed business meetings, jewelry purchases you never received, restaurant bills for two when he was supposedly eating alone. How did you get these? Sarah asked. I have my sources, Rebecca said evasively. The point is, Mark's been having an affair for at least 6 months. But that's not all. She pulled out printed screenshots. He's been researching how to have someone involuntarily committed. Look at his search history, psychiatric hold Connecticut. Power of attorney mental illness? Inheritance involuntary commitment? He was going to have me locked up, Sarah asked, the full horror dawning on her. After you miscarried from the poison, Detective Russell said, studying the evidence. Classic pattern. Cause a tragedy, claim the wife had a breakdown, institutionalize her, take control of all assets. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Where are you? Your car is at the hospital. Are you okay? Don't respond yet, Russell advised. Let him sweat a little. Another text. Sarah, I'm worried. Please call me. Then another. I'm tracking your phone. I can see you're at Rebecca's. I'm coming to get you. He's tracking me, Sarah said, panic rising. Good, Russell said. Let him come. We'll be ready. Within 15 minutes, Mark was pounding on Rebecca's door. Sarah, I know you're in there. You're scaring me. What's going on? Russell nodded for Sarah to answer. Sarah opened the door, trying to appear normal despite her racing heart. Mark stood there, looking concerned and handsome in his expensive suit. Thank God, he said, pulling her into a hug she didn't return. When I saw your car at the hospital, I panicked. Is the baby okay? The baby's fine, Sarah said carefully. Then why were you at the hospital? Why didn't you call me? Dr. Anderson wanted to discuss some test results, Sarah said. Mark's expression shifted slightly. What kind of test results? Blood work. She said there were some unusual readings. Unusual how? Mark pressed, and Sarah could see the calculation in his eyes. She wants to run more tests, Sarah lied. She thinks maybe the pharmacy mixed up my prescription. Relief flooded Mark's face. The pharmacy? Those incompetent idiots. I'll sue them. How dare they endanger you and our baby? His performance was flawless. If Sarah didn't know the truth, she'd believe his outrage was genuine. I should go home and rest, Sarah said. Of course, Mark said immediately. I'll drive you. We can get your car later. I'll drive her, Rebecca said firmly. Mark's jaw tightened. I'm her husband. I'll take care of her. I'm her sister, and I don't trust you. What's that supposed to mean? Mark asked, his voice dangerous. It means I know about Vanessa, Rebecca said. Mark went very still. I don't know what you're talking about. 28 years old, blonde, personal trainer. Rebecca listed. The apartment you're renting for her downtown? The $70,000 you've spent on her in 6 months? You've been spying on me, Mark asked, his mask slipping to show real anger. I've been protecting my sister, Rebecca replied. From what I've given Sarah, everything, this house, financial security, a life most women dream of. You've given her a prison, Rebecca shot back, and now you're trying to give her a coffin. How dare you? Stop, Sarah said quietly. Both of you, stop. Mark, I'll come home with you. We need to talk. Sarah, no, Rebecca protested. It's okay, Sarah said, though nothing was okay. I need to get some things anyway. In the car, Mark was silent for the first few minutes, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Finally, as he spoke, Your sister is poisoning you against me. She's concerned, Sarah said carefully. She's jealous, Mark corrected. She's been divorced 3 times. Sarah, she can't stand to see you happy. Am I happy? Sarah asked. Mark glanced at her. What kind of question is that you have everything? I had a career, Sarah said. Friends, independence. You have something better, Mark said. You have me, you have our baby. You have a life women would kill for. The irony of that statement wasn't lost on Sarah. Back at the house, Sarah tried to act normal while Mark watched her every move. She could feel the wire against her skin, could hear Detective Russell's voice in her earpiece telling her to stay calm. I need to lie down, Sarah said. Take your vitamins first, Mark said, producing the bottle from his briefcase. You missed this morning's dose. Dr. Anderson said I should stop taking them until she figures out what's wrong. Sarah lied. That's ridiculous, Mark said. The baby needs nutrients. Here. He poured pills into his hand, holding them out to her. I'll take them later, Sarah said. Take them now, Mark insisted, his voice hardening. I'm not asking, Sarah. I said no. Mark grabbed her wrist, hard enough to hurt. You're being irrational. These vitamins are important. Let go of me. Not until you take your vitamins. Why? Sarah asked, looking him in the eye. Why is it so important that I take these specific vitamins? Mark's grip tightened. Because I care about our baby. Do you care about the $5 million insurance policy you tried to take out on me? Mark released her wrist, stepping back. How do you? I found the papers. Mark. The forged signatures. The psychiatric facility brochures. I know everything. Mark's face went through several expressions: surprise, calculation, then cold determination. You don't know anything, he said finally. I know you're having an affair with Vanessa. I know you've been stealing from your company to pay for it. I know you've been planning to have me committed. You're paranoid, Mark said smoothly. This is exactly what Dr. Brennan warned me about. Pregnancy psychosis. You're having delusions. Am I? Then you won't mind if we have these vitamins tested. Mark lunged for the bottle, but Sarah was quicker, throwing it across the room. You crazy bitch, Mark shouted, his mask completely gone now. Crazy, Sarah said, or just not willing to be poisoned anymore. Mark went very still. What did you say? The vitamins. Mark, they're full of methotrexate. You've been trying to cause a miscarriage. You're insane. No, I'm not. And I have proof. Dr. Anderson found it in my blood. The police know everything. Mark's face went white. You called the police. They're listening right now, Sarah said, pulling at her shirt to show the wire. For a moment, Mark stood frozen. Then he smiled, cold and calculating. You're recording me without my consent. That's illegal. Sarah, any lawyer would have it thrown out. Connecticut is a one-party consent state, Sarah said, remembering her legal training. I only need my own consent to record. You stupid, Mark started toward her. I wouldn't. Detective Russell's voice came from the doorway. She stood there with 3 other officers, weapons drawn. Mark Mitchell, you're under arrest for attempted murder. This is entrapment, Mark said. She set me up. You set yourself up the moment you decided to poison your pregnant wife, Russell said, cuffing him. As they led him away, Mark turned to Sarah. This isn't over. I'll be out on bail by morning, and when I am, you'll regret this. Is that a threat? Russell asked. It's a promise, Mark said. With Mark arrested, the police got a warrant to search the apartment he'd been renting for Vanessa. What they found there was damning. Vanessa was home when they arrived, wearing expensive lingerie Mark had bought her, preparing for what she thought would be a romantic evening. Instead, she found herself facing Detective Russell and a search warrant. I don't know anything about any poisoning, Vanessa said immediately, before anyone had even mentioned it. Interesting that you'd bring that up, Russell said. We haven't told you why we're here. The apartment was full of evidence. Receipts for methotrexate purchased with cash, medical textbooks on pregnancy and poisoning, bookmarked and highlighted, a journal where Vanessa had written about her plan to be with Mark once his wife was out of the picture. This isn't what it looks like, Vanessa said desperately. It looks like conspiracy to commit murder, Russell said. You're under arrest. Wait, Vanessa cried. I'll tell you everything. It was all Mark's idea. I'm listening, Russell said. Vanessa's confession was recorded. She detailed how Mark had approached her, how he'd promised her a life of luxury if she helped him get rid of his wife. She explained how she'd obtained the methotrexate using her old nursing connections, how she'd taught Mark to hollow out the vitamins and refill them. He said she was old and boring, Vanessa said. He said the pregnancy was a mistake, that it would ruin his plans for early retirement. What about the insurance? Russell asked. $5 million, Vanessa confirmed. He was going to collect it, then we'd move to Costa Rica. He already bought a house there, under a fake name. And you were okay with murdering a pregnant woman? Vanessa started crying. He said it wasn't murder. He said the methotrexate would just cause a miscarriage, that Sarah would be so depressed she'd kill herself. He said it would look natural. And if she didn't kill herself, then he'd help her, Vanessa admitted. He had it all planned. Make it look like an overdose or an accident. The full scope of Mark's plan was chilling. He'd been planning Sarah's murder for months, long before the pregnancy. The baby had just accelerated his timeline. Mark made bail, as he'd predicted, $500,000, paid by his mother, who still believed her son was innocent. He was ordered to stay away from Sarah and to wear an ankle monitor. But Sarah didn't feel safe. He'll find a way to get to me, she told Rebecca. Not if I have anything to say about it, Rebecca replied. She'd moved into Sarah's house, along with an off-duty police officer she'd hired as security. The trial date was set for 3 months away, 3 months where Sarah had to live in fear, wondering if Mark would find a way to finish what he'd started. He tried to contact her through lawyers, through friends, through social media. Each attempt was documented, adding to the list of charges against him. Then, 2 weeks before the trial, James Patterson contacted Sarah. He was an insurance investigator who'd been looking into Mark's attempts to increase the policies. "Mrs. Mitchell," Patterson said when they met, "your husband has been planning this for longer than you know. I've found evidence of similar situations in his past." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "His first fiancée, before you, she died in a car accident a month before their wedding. He collected $1 million insurance policy." Sarah felt sick. "He killed someone before." "I can't prove it," Patterson said. "But the pattern is there, and there's more. He's been embezzling from his company for years. Small amounts, but consistent. He's built up nearly $1 million in offshore accounts. Can you prove that? With your permission to access certain records?" "Yes, it would add financial crimes to his charges. Make it harder for him to buy his way out." Sarah gave permission. The more charges against Mark, the better. The prosecution built their case methodically. They had the poisoned vitamins, Vanessa's confession, the forged insurance documents, the embezzlement evidence, and recordings of Mark's threats. Dr. Anderson testified about the methotrexate in Sarah's blood, explaining how it would have killed both Sarah and the baby if she'd continued taking the vitamins. "The dosing was precise," she testified. "This wasn't accidental. Someone calculated exactly how much to give to cause maximum damage while appearing natural." The pharmacy testified that they had no record of filling Sarah's prescription for 3 months. Despite Mark claiming to pick it up regularly, he was creating fake bottles, the pharmacist explained, using old bottles and refilling them with poison pills. Mark's co-workers testified about his affair with Vanessa, about the money he'd stolen, about his comments regarding Sarah. "He called her a burden," one colleague said the pregnancy was ruining his life. The most damaging testimony came from Vanessa herself. In exchange for a reduced sentence, she detailed everything. "Mark said Sarah was worth more dead than alive," she testified. $5 million in insurance versus a messy divorce that would cost him everything. "Did you love him?" the prosecutor asked. "I thought I did," Vanessa said. "But I think I loved the lifestyle he promised me more." Vanessa's biggest mistake was underestimating Sarah. She thought Sarah was weak, beaten down by years of Mark's control. She didn't expect Sarah to fight back. On the stand, Vanessa tried to paint herself as another victim of Mark's manipulation. But Sarah's attorney was ready. "You have a nursing degree, correct?" the attorney asked. "Yes, but I lost my license." "For stealing drugs from patients?" "Yes." "So you knew exactly what methotrexate would do to a pregnant woman?" "Mark told me." "You knew, didn't you? You knew it would kill the baby. Possibly kill Sarah too." Yes. And you did it anyway." "Mark promised me." "You did it for money, didn't you? For a lifestyle you felt you deserved." Vanessa broke down crying, but the damage was done. She wasn't a victim. She was a willing accomplice to attempted murder. Mark's defense was that Sarah had poisoned herself to frame him. His lawyer argued that Sarah had discovered the affair and decided to get revenge by making it look like Mark was trying to kill her, but the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution presented a timeline showing Mark's movements, his purchases, his communications with Vanessa. They showed the jury the offshore accounts, the insurance documents, the psychiatric facility brochures. "This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime," the prosecutor said in closing. "This was months of planning. Mark Mitchell decided his wife and child were obstacles to his happiness, so he decided to remove them permanently." The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all charges, Mark was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Vanessa got 15 years. As they led Mark away, he looked at Sarah one last time. "You've ruined everything," he said. "No," Sarah replied. "You ruined everything the moment you decided my life was worth less than money." Emma was born healthy and perfect. 2 weeks after the trial ended, Sarah held her daughter, overcome with gratitude that they'd both survived. Rebecca was there, tears streaming down her face. "She's beautiful," she said. "She's alive," and Sarah said, "That's all that matters." Sarah divorced Mark while he was in prison, getting everything: the house, the assets, the retirement accounts. She sold the house, unable to live in a place where she'd been slowly poisoned. She went back to law, Opening her own practice specializing in domestic violence cases, she helped women escape dangerous marriages, recognize the signs of abuse, protect themselves and their children. Her story made national news. She wrote a book about her experience, with all proceeds going to domestic violence shelters. She testified before Congress about the need for better protections for pregnant women. "My husband tried to kill me and our unborn child for money," she told the committee. "And he almost got away with it. How many women aren't as lucky as I was? How many don't survive?" Laws were changed. The Vitamin Murder Prevention Act required additional verification for insurance changes during pregnancy and mandated that pharmacies confirm prescriptions with patients directly. Emma grew up strong and fearless, surrounded by love. Sarah never told her the full truth about her father, only that he was sick and couldn't be part of their lives. When Emma was 5, she asked, "Why don't I have a daddy like other kids?" "You have something better," Sarah told her. "You have a mom who fought for you before you were even born. You have an aunt who would do anything for you. You have a family that chose love over fear." Sarah never remarried. She didn't need to. She had her daughter, her sister, her work. She had survived. She had won. And Mark. He died in prison 10 years into his sentence, stabbed by another inmate during an argument over commissary. Sarah felt nothing when she heard the news. He'd been dead to her for years. Vanessa was released after 7 years, having been a model prisoner. She wrote to Sarah once, apologizing, begging forgiveness. Sarah never responded. Some things couldn't be forgiven, but Sarah didn't live in bitterness. She lived in purpose, helping other women, raising her daughter, building a life of meaning from the ashes of attempted murder. Every morning, she took her vitamins, real ones now, purchased by herself, from a pharmacist who knew her story and always double-checked everything. And every morning, she remembered that moment when she'd looked at those pills and known something was wrong. "Trust your instincts," she told every woman she helped. "They're there to protect you." That morning, Sarah didn't take her vitamins. Her instincts saved 2 lives, and that was the real miracle, not just surviving, but learning to trust herself again. Learning that her life had value beyond being someone's wife. Learning that she was worth fighting for. The end came not with Mark's death or Vanessa's release, but with Emma's college graduation. Sarah sat in the audience, watching her daughter walk across the stage, brilliant and confident and alive. "I want to thank my mom," Emma said in her valedictorian speech. "She taught me that strength isn't about never falling down, it's about getting back up, even when someone's trying to keep you down. She taught me that love shouldn't hurt, that control isn't care, that no one has the right to dim your light." Sarah cried then. Good tears, healing tears. They'd made it. Despite everything, they'd made it. And in her purse, next to her phone and wallet, was a small bottle of vitamins, real ones, safe ones. A reminder that sometimes the smallest things can save your life, if you just pay attention. The story continues with additional detail to reach exactly 20,000 words. Years before the attempted murder, there had been signs Sarah had missed or explained away. The way Mark had insisted on managing their finances from the very beginning of their marriage, claiming it was easier if one person handled everything. The way he'd slowly isolated her from her law school friends, always having a reason why they couldn't attend gatherings. "Jennifer's a bad influence, still single at 40. David clearly has feelings for you. It's inappropriate now that you're married. Your study group doesn't respect our marriage if they keep inviting you to late-night dinners." Each isolation had seemed reasonable at the time. Sarah had been so in love, so eager to please her successful, handsome husband who'd chosen her out of all the women at that legal conference in Boston. She'd been 22, fresh out of law school, insecure despite graduating at the top of her class. Mark had been 32, established, confident, everything she thought she wanted. Their wedding had been perfect, or so everyone said. 200 guests at the Hartford Club, a $10,000 dress Sarah had thought excessive, but Mark had insisted on. A honeymoon in Bora Bora that cost more than Sarah's annual salary as a first-year associate. Looking back, she realized it had all been about image for Mark. The perfect wife, the perfect wedding, the perfect life to present to the world. The control had started small, suggestions about her wardrobe. That suit makes you look masculine. You're so beautiful when you wear dresses. Comments about her work. Do you really need to stay late again? I miss my wife. Concerns about her family. Your mother calls too much. It's interfering with our time together. By year 5, Sarah barely recognized herself. The fierce young attorney who'd argued cases in federal court had become someone who needed permission to buy groceries. The woman who'd run marathons now rarely left the house without Mark. The daughter who'd called her mother daily now spoke to her once a month, with Mark listening on extension. The fertility struggles had given Mark even more control. You need to reduce stress, he'd said. Quit your job. Focus on getting pregnant. It had seemed loving at the time. Now she saw it for what it was, removing her financial independence, making her completely dependent on him. The IVF treatments had been brutal. Hormones that made her sick. Procedures that left her sore and swollen. The emotional roller coaster of hope and disappointment. Mark had been supportive in public. The devoted husband, desperate for a child. In private, he'd been different. Frustrated by her mood swings. Angry about the cost. Resentful of the focus on her body, her needs, her schedule. $63,000, he'd say whenever they argued. I've spent $63,000 on this obsession of yours. It's our child, Sarah would protest. It's your need, Mark would correct. I was fine without children. But then why had he agreed to try? Why had he pushed for more rounds when she was ready to give up? Now she understood. The pregnancy was never about a child for Mark. It was about the insurance policy he could take out, the accident he could stage, the money he could collect. That final round of IVF, the one that worked, had been different. Mark had been almost eager, checking her hormone levels, making sure she took every medication, timing everything perfectly. She'd thought he'd finally come around to wanting a family. Really, he'd been eager to create his victim. The pregnancy should have been joyful. After so many years, so many failures. Finally success. But Mark had been strange from the start. Overly concerned about her health, but in a controlling way. Insisting on choosing her doctor. Coming to every appointment. Speaking for her when the doctor asked questions. She's been very emotional. He'd tell Dr. Anderson. Crying, fits, paranoia. Very unlike her. Sarah had thought he was being protective. Dr. Anderson had apparently thought otherwise, making notes that would later become evidence. The vitamins had started in her second trimester. Mark had come home with them, supposedly from the pharmacy, insisting they were better than what she'd been taking. Higher folic acid content, he'd said. Better for the baby's development. Sarah hadn't questioned it. Why would she? This was her husband, the father of her child, the man who'd spent $63,000 to help her get pregnant. Of course he wanted the baby to be healthy. The sickness had started gradually. A little extra nausea, explained away as normal pregnancy symptoms. Fatigue that seemed excessive but that Mark attributed to her advanced maternal age. Cramping that worried her but that Mark insisted was just the baby growing. You're looking for problems, he'd say when she expressed concern. You've wanted this for so long, and now you're trying to sabotage it with worry. The gaslighting had been so effective that Sarah had started to believe she was being paranoid. Maybe she was looking for problems. Maybe she was being dramatic. Maybe the pregnancy hormones were making her irrational, just like Mark said. But then came the spotting. Light at first, then heavier. Sarah had wanted to go to the emergency room, but Mark had convinced her to wait. It's normal, he'd insisted. Lots of women spot during pregnancy. You'll just sit in the ER for hours to be told everything's fine. Rest instead. She'd rested and taken her vitamins and gotten sicker. The night she'd screenshot the text from Vanessa had been a turning point, though she hadn't realized it at the time. 2 a.m., Mark's phone lighting up on the nightstand. He'd grabbed it quickly, but not before Sarah saw the preview. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. Wear the red tie I bought you. Who's texting you at 2 a.m., Sarah had asked. Tom from work, Mark had said smoothly. Emergency with the Peterson acquisition. Tom calls you baby. It's an inside joke, Mark had said. From a team-building exercise. Go back to sleep. But Sarah hadn't been able to sleep. Something about the lie so easy, so practiced had triggered a dormant instinct. The next day, While Mark showered, she looked at his phone. He'd deleted the message, but she'd already screenshot it. That had started her investigation. Looking at credit card statements, checking his calendar against actual company events, noting the new cologne, the new clothes, the gym membership he'd suddenly become devoted to. Vanessa, 28 and perfect in all the ways Sarah no longer was. Tight where Sarah was soft, energetic where Sarah was tired, childless where Sarah was 7 months pregnant. But even discovering the affair hadn't made Sarah suspect attempted murder. She'd thought Mark was just a cliché middle-aged man having a midlife crisis with a younger woman. Painful, but not deadly. It was the insurance papers that had changed everything. Hidden in his desk. Not even in the safe where he kept important documents. Like he'd been reviewing them, preparing them, getting ready to submit them. $5 million. Her life reduced to a number on a form. Then the psychiatric facility brochures. Shady Pines Psychiatric Treatment Center. Specialized care for pregnancy-related mental health crisis. With Mark's handwriting in the margins, private rooms, restricted visitation, long-term care available. Why would he be researching this unless he was planning to have her committed? The final piece had been the vitamins themselves. That morning when they'd looked different, felt different, seemed wrong. The instinct she'd almost ignored, almost suppressed, the way she'd suppressed so many instincts over 20 years. But something, maybe the baby, maybe her own survival instinct finally breaking through, had made her lie, had made her slip those pills into her purse instead of her mouth. That lie had saved 2 lives. Dr. Anderson later told her that 1 more week of those vitamins would have caused a miscarriage. 2 more weeks might have killed Sarah too. The methotrexate levels were building in her system, approaching toxic levels. Her body had been fighting it, which explained the severe morning sickness, the fatigue, the cramping. Her body had been trying to warn her. "You're lucky," Dr. Anderson had said. "Most women don't realize until it's too late." Lucky. Sarah didn't feel lucky. She felt stupid for not seeing it sooner, angry for letting it get this far, guilty for bringing a child into this situation. But she also felt determined, determined to survive, determined to protect her daughter, determined to make Mark pay for what he tried to do. The trial had been brutal. Mark's lawyers had attacked her character, her mental health, her motivations. They'd brought up her fertility struggles, suggesting she was unstable from the hormone treatments. They'd highlighted her job loss, implying she was bitter about giving up her career. They'd even suggested she'd poisoned herself for attention, a desperate woman trying to keep her straying husband. But the evidence was undeniable. The methotrexate in her blood, the poisoned vitamins, Vanessa's confession, the forged insurance documents, the offshore accounts, the embezzled funds, Mark's own words captured on recording. "You're going to drink this smoothie, and then you're going to have a tragic accident." Those words, played for the jury, had sealed his fate. The aftermath had been almost as hard as the crime itself. Sarah had to rebuild her entire life. 20 years of marriage had left her with no independent identity. She'd been Mrs. Mark Mitchell for so long, she'd forgotten who Sarah was. Therapy helped. Dr. Jennifer Walters specialized in survivors of domestic abuse. She helped Sarah understand that what had happened wasn't her fault, that Mark had deliberately chosen her because he'd seen her vulnerability, her eagerness to please, her willingness to sacrifice herself for love. "Predators are excellent at choosing victims," Dr. Walters explained. "They look for people with specific traits, empathy, loyalty, a desire to see the best in others. These aren't weaknesses, Sarah. They're strengths that were exploited." Slowly, Sarah rebuilt. She studied for the bar exam again, having let her license lapse during her marriage. She reached out to old friends, apologizing for years of absence, explaining what had happened. Most were supportive. Some were angry she'd let Mark isolate her. All were shocked that the perfect couple they'd envied had been hiding attempted murder. The practice she built with Rebecca was more than just a job. It was a mission. Every woman they helped was a victory over Mark and men like him. Every life saved was proof that survival was possible. They expanded quickly. Within 2 years, they had offices in Hartford, New Haven, and Stamford. They employed 15 attorneys, all women, many of them survivors themselves. They partnered with shelters, hospitals, police departments. They created a network of support that hadn't existed when Sarah needed it. The book she wrote wasn't just about her story. It was a guide for recognizing the signs of coercive control, of escalating abuse, of potential violence. She included checklists, resources, escape plans. The appendix contained a detailed list of warning signs. Partner insists on managing all finances, isolation from family and friends, constant monitoring of whereabouts, criticism disguised as concern, gaslighting about memory and perception, control over medication and medical care, sudden interest in life insurance, research into psychiatric facilities, affairs with younger partners, unexplained illness during pregnancy. The book became required reading in domestic violence training programs. Sarah received letters from women around the world who'd recognized their own situations in her story. One letter stood out. It was from a woman in Texas whose husband had been poisoning her with antifreeze. She'd read Sarah's book, recognized the signs, went to the hospital, and discovered the poisoning just in time. Her husband was now in prison. She and her 3 children were safe. "You saved our lives," and the woman wrote. "Your story gave me the courage to trust my instincts." That letter sat framed on Sarah's desk, a reminder of why she'd chosen to be public about her story, despite the pain of reliving it. Emma grew up surrounded by strong women: Sarah, Rebecca, the attorneys at the firm, the survivors who became family friends. She learned early that love shouldn't hurt, that control isn't care, that no one has the right to make you small. When Emma was 10, she asked more detailed questions about her father. "Is he dead?" she asked. "No," Sarah said, deciding honesty was important. "He's in prison." "What did he do?" Sarah had prepared for this moment. "He tried to hurt us when you were still in my belly, but we were stronger than he expected. We survived, and he went to jail." "Will he ever get out?" "No, baby. He'll never hurt us again." Emma processed this with the resilience children often show. "Good," she said simply. "We don't need him." And they didn't. They had built a life full of love, purpose, meaning. They had survived the worst and created something beautiful from the ashes. Sarah sometimes thought about the woman she'd been before young, naive, desperate for love and validation. She didn't hate that woman. That woman had survived 20 years of psychological warfare. That woman had saved 2 lives by trusting her instincts at the crucial moment. That woman had been stronger than she knew. But this Sarah, older, wiser, scarred but not broken, was who she was meant to be. An advocate, a mother, a survivor, a warrior. The speaking engagements took her around the country. Medical conferences, legal symposiums, police training sessions. Always the same message: believe women, trust instincts, look for patterns, act on suspicions. At one conference, a young doctor approached her. "I had a patient last week," the doctor said. "Pregnant, sick, husband insisting on managing her medication. Because of your talk, I tested for poisoning, found arsenic. She's safe now. He's arrested." These moments made the pain of sharing her story worth it. Every life saved was a victory. The financial settlement from the divorce had made Sarah wealthy, Mark's assets, the house, the investments all hers now. She used the money to fund scholarships for women escaping abusive marriages, to support shelters, to pay for legal representation for those who couldn't afford it. She also set up a trust for Emma, ensuring her daughter would never be financially dependent on anyone. The large colonial in the suburbs was replaced with a smaller but warmer home in a gated community. Security was a priority now. Cameras, alarms, a panic room. Perhaps excessive, but Sarah would never again ignore her instincts about safety. The night terrors lasted for 2 years. Dreams where Mark had succeeded, where she'd taken those vitamins, where Emma had never been born. She'd wake gasping, checking her phone to see pictures of Emma, proof that they'd survived. EMDR therapy helped, processing the trauma, rewriting the narrative, reclaiming her power. The nightmares faded, replaced by dreams of the future: Emma's graduation, wedding, grandchildren. A future Mark had tried to steal but failed.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.